Welcome to everyone. We are privileged today to have Professor Paula Fredriksen, who is the Aurelio Professor of Scripture, emerita at Boston University since 2009. She has been Distinguished Visiting Professor of Comparative Religion at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. She also holds 2 honorary doctorates in theology and religious studies. She has published widely on the social and intellectual history of ancient Christianity and on pagan-Jewish-Christian relations in the Roman Empire. Author of Augustine on Romans in 1982, published in 1982, and From Jesus to Christ, published in 1988 and then republished in 2000. Her Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, won a National Jewish Book Award. More recently, she has explored the development of Christian anti-Judaism and Augustine's singular response to it in Augustine and the Jews, a Christian defense of Jews and Judaism. That book was published in 2010, and has investigated the shifting conceptions of God and of humanity in sin, the early history of an idea, 2012, and her last work, the subject of which we will be discussing today in this roundtable talk, is called Paul, the Pagan's Apostle. It came out in 2017, this year. It places Paul's Jewish messianic message to Gentiles within the wider world of ancient Mediterranean culture. Paula, welcome so much. Because of our prior relationship, I struggle if I should call you Professor Fredriksen or Paula. Is it right? What would you prefer?
Fraulein Dr. Professor.
Paula, what I wanted to do is I wanted to, for the benefit of our listeners, also read out a summary of the book that we're discussing, which is Paul, the Pagan's Apostle. So just one paragraph, and I think we would then be able to benefit in a greater way from this roundtable talk. Often seen as the author of timeless Christian theology, Paul himself insisted that he lived in and worked in history's closing hours. His letters propel his readers into 2 ancient worlds, one Jewish, one pagan. The first was incandescent with apocalyptic hopes, expecting God, through his Messiah, to fulfill his ancient promises of redemption to Israel. The second teemed with ancient actors, not only human but also divine, angry superhuman forces, jealous demons, hostile cosmic gods. Both worlds are Paul's, and his convictions about the first shaped his actions in the second. Only by situating Paul within this charged social context of gods and humans, pagans and Jews, cities, synagogues, and competing Christ assemblies, this book argues, can we begin to understand his mission and message. So first of all, Paula, thank you for writing this excellent book, and thank you so much for allowing us to be with you today and to understand some of the text behind this book better. What I have done here is basically I went through the book. By the way, the book is available in Kindle, in printed version, and also in audio version. I'm a little bit disappointed that it was not Paula herself that is writing her book, but reading her book, but the person who read her book did an excellent job, so I very much recommend everyone to get it. I think you can get it on Audible, which you can get through Amazon pretty easily. So it is called Paul, Pagan's Apostle by Paula Fredriksen. All right. So Paula, this text comes from one of the chapters in your book. I've chose the following text to begin, if I may. Even by Jews themselves, however, this cultic exclusivism was enacted variously. As our inscriptions especially attest, some Jews in the Western diaspora were comfortable showing respect if not full public cult worship, to alien divinities, while at the same time asserting their own identities as Iudaioi. For those listening, and Paula should feel free to correct me, the basic idea here is that Judeans and the Greek wording, the Greek pronunciation is used, Iudaioi, evidently without any sense of conflict, Paula writes. But in the Roman period, avatars of the polis, these Hellenistic gods, structured civic and cultural life through the works shaping the literary canon, Homer first of all, the classical playwrights, the work of Hellenistic grammarians and rhetoricians. These gods mediated paideia, higher education, and thus culture. For both science and philosophy, they structured and organized the physical universe. Our planets still answer to the names of these deities. Do not revile the gods, counseled Moses in Greek, Exodus 22:28. Commenting on this verse, Philo noted that such courtesy promoted peace, since reviling each other's gods always causes war. And Philo went on to add that Moses the rabbi also enjoined respect for pagan rulers, who, according to the poets, are of the same seed as the gods. Some Hellenistic Jews, in brief, advised and even advocated that Jews show certain respect for their neighbors' pantheons. All right. I think, Paula, that this is a pretty difficult pill to swallow to a lot of people reading the New Testament, imagining the Jewish setting, albeit in the Greco-Roman world, but it is still something hard to imagine that much. We are accustomed to thinking, you know, Greeks are Greeks and Jews are Jews, and there's not really much, you know, there's not much cross-fertilization going on. As a matter of fact, people very often in Christian churches today would speak of the Jewish mind and of the Greek mind, and it's all seems to be very easily separated and distinguished into two. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask, and you should feel free to fill in whatever else that you would like to comment upon, to expand on what you've already written here. But the questions I wanted to ask you is in which way, actually, and I was wondering about this exactly, in which way could Jews honor pagan gods in late antiquity? What would the difference look like exactly between honoring and worshiping?
Wow. Can I answer 5 out of those 20 questions? Let me say, first of all, that by the time we get to the 1st century, Jews had been living in the Greek-speaking Western diaspora for 3 or 4 centuries. And by living in the Greco-Roman city, they're living within a pagan religious institution. Ancient cities are religious institutions. They're not neutral secular spaces. So anytime in an inscription we have a town councilor or an ephebe, who would be one of these late adolescent males who are training in a gymnasium to become future citizens, whenever when we see an athlete or an actor, in fact there were even Jewish gladiators. I can't imagine what their mothers were thinking, but there are Jews all throughout Greek culture, and all of these activities, a town council meeting would begin with a sacrifice to the gods of the city. An athletic competition is dedicated to the gods of the city, and this is because heaven looks after the earth, and you want to have a good relationship with the gods who supervise the city. This is no less true for Jewish citizens of Greek cities than it would be for pagan citizens of Greek cities. So the Jewish God was known to be very peculiar in the Greek mind for demanding that his people not worship other gods. It was considered rude. So what we know is that if these Jews are also part of the Greco-Roman municipal culture, if they're athletes, if they're in the ephebate, they are somehow present when sacrifices are being offered to the god, but they're not actually doing the sacrifice themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Would they bring a tuna fish sandwich from home rather than eat the meat sacrificed to idols? Well, we know from Paul's letters that's a judgment call. If it doesn't offend another person in the community who's there, go ahead and eat. If you think it would offend somebody in the community, don't eat.
So to use a modern American controversy is that the Jews in the pagan assemblies would stand for the star-sprinkled banner and would not sit down, but they would not necessarily sing it.
That's correct. That's a lovely analogy. That's a lovely. But remember, unlike the Star-Spangled Banner, what a sacrifice does in antiquity, and it does this in the Jerusalem temple as well as in the temple at Delos, a sacrifice calls the god down to the altar. So if the sacrifice is being done around an altar, there is a presence. And Jews would, any god is bigger than any human. The correct attitude toward a god is of a certain kind of respect. And the Jews' own sacred text talk about the existence of these other gods. God is not the only God, even in his own book. So it's not...
The 10 words, the 10 commandments itself are proving the point.
Or when God says he's going to go down to Egypt and smite the gods of the Egyptians, right? I mean, the Bible is full of other gods.
Absolutely.
The issue for ancient Jews is that their God is the supreme God, but they certainly knew that other lower gods existed.